Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators. And Jeremy Hinks has an interesting job as a curator of a jazz podcast. And we're going to find out more about that. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Hello. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, let us know your, let's say, 5-minute story of your life leading up to this curator job.
Okay. I'm a music junkie and a music journalist. Oh, and I did shoot a lot of shows and photograph and that, and I wrote for, actually, believe it or not, the Mormon Worker. It was a Mormon anarchist periodical. And
Wow.
I was involved with that, and then it kind of faded out once we all went apostate. And
So it had like a sickle and a Book of Mormon as their logo?
No, it was it had the anarchist sign and I think the beehive, the anarchist symbol, the A, and then the beehive, right? And
okay.
I was in let's see, I had been to Harvard Divinity School. I didn't graduate, but one of the other guys there had graduated from there. His name is William van Valkenen. We had a bunch of just people all over. We had like 3 subscribers from Iceland, you know.
So let's back up a little bit. How'd you get to Harvard Divinity School?
Okay, when after
you were like 5 or 6 years old, and you thought, you know what, I'm going to go to Harvard Divinity School someday.
No, actually, I was living in France, and one of the professors there was doing a presentation at a forum, and I picked a fight with him over a very specific set of issues that had been written in a book cited by him and one of his and Elaine Pagels over at Yale Divinity School. And so I started banging his questions out with him, and then we spent a lot of time in there. And he said, "That's a very good point you make. It's very well researched. You have a lot to back it up, but you're still wrong." And then
were you trying to convert him?
No. I was like, look, you said this, she said this, but I think this is what was the point here in this. And I'm not even going to go into what it was about, because it's like, that would take 5 hours to explain it. And he was like, good, very good question, very good approach, a lot of good research, but you're still wrong. And after that, he and I talked. He said, hey, if you ever like get out of the Boston area, look me up, we'll go to lunch, right? So I did. And hey, let's so we went to lunch, and he said, so have you applied? I'm like, for what? He says, you can look, come in on this undergrad panel here, and you can start taking your classes here with us, right? They'll let you in. And I was like, get out. And I did. I got in that way.
That sort of reminds me of the My Cousin Vinny story, where he says he got a ticket and he went to court to argue it, and the judge liked it so much that he said, you should become a lawyer. And then My Cousin Vinny, from the movie, became a lawyer. So it's a similar thing where somebody takes an interest in you. You weren't thinking about it. And then all of a sudden it becomes a path, a career path.
Yeah, I never fancied myself as a Harvard guy,
Yeah.
And then suddenly there I am.
You were thinking Cambridge.
No, I was thinking I'd get back. Well, I was planning on being a seminary teacher, and so I come back from France, finish up at the University of Utah, and but and I ended up at Harvard thinking I would prove Mormonism true, and that backfired.
So you wanted to be a volunteer seminary teacher, not one of the paid CES.
Oh, I wanted to be a paid one. Yeah.
Okay.
Divinity school degree from Harvard. That'd do it for me, No, it didn't happen.
Okay.
But I had a great experience up there, and, rose-colored glasses, or what I saw as a child, as I thought as a child. And,
it probably helped you become a better writer.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Like Harvard, before you even take any classes, you got to learn to write. And they put you through like writing on expository issues and writing this and writing that. You had to we had to take a lot of writing classes. So, I did a lot of writing. I wrote my thesis on the book of Jeremiah, and that was in one class. The other was in one of my philosophy classes. I was quoting. I was an argument between Nagel and Stephen Jay Gould about the human intellect. So yeah, those are my two big papers that they were the ones I spent most of my time on in there. But again, none of it matters now. But at the time, we really cared about the things that were in these ideas, these arguments between these philosophers. So
and just think that is really, in a way, even though it started off as a small group of people 2,500 years ago, but arguing Jeremiah has probably been going on for 2,500 years, right? What it means.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of time invested. There are probably works around Jesus' time that maybe some people can refer to. There's probably monks all through the Middle Ages and before were trying to hash out how that relates to Christianity or all kinds of different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jeremiah was a reluctant prophet. By the time you get to Lamentations, the guy needed antidepressants.
Herbal medicine.
Oh, he took the biggest beating of any prophet, man. He was he got arrested on every other page, and yeah, again, did it really happen or not? I don't know. But at the time I saw so much woven into it as
parallelisms.
Well, but how he was the pivotal prophet and how all the other prophets were told to leave. Daniel left, Ezekiel left, Lehi left, right? All the, even Nephi referenced that Jeremiah had been arrested. But again, I was seeing it from a Mormon point of view. And
it had to be true.
Had to be true, man. But actually, Mormonism crashed around me when I found Deutero-Isaiah.
Oh,
yeah.
How'd you stumble on that? Scholarly stuff.
Well, yeah, like you know what Deutero-Isaiah, right? That there were 5 chapters of Isaiah written
by somebody else.
Yeah, like 65, 70 years after Nephi supposedly happened. How is Nephi quoting these 5 chapters word for word?
Oh, right. The Mormon connection got you, right?
Yeah. I was like, that doesn't work, man. Like Mormonism taught me to not trust the Bible fully, and then the Bible turned around, bitch slapped Mormonism, and it was like, hey, man, you can't explain this, can you? And I've yet to meet a single apologist who wants to answer any of that.
So you're saying as long as we can say the Bible as it's translated correctly, then like we're on safe ground. It's sort of like in Mormonism, well, we just don't know. We'll learn when we die why God didn't give the priesthood to black people or something like that, right? When I was young, right? But you're saying that when it appears in the Book of Mormon, an error from I don't know how many years ago, 1,700 years ago, or Deutero-Isaiah, so 2,500 years ago.
Yeah. Deutero-Isaiah happened so these 5 chapters, anything written after Isaiah 39 happened during the Babylonian exile, like 540 BC, 535 BC, right? Around there, where, how did Nephi have this perfectly quoted from the King James version of the Bible, not the Hebrew Bible, but
that's right. The
and
1769 version of the King James version.
And that just was like, okay, I can't do it. And then I ended up calling my Harvard professors and I was going, wait, what the hell here? And they're like, no, you're right. It couldn't have happened. And that was it. Like, that was my shelf breaker right there.
They're saying like, that's why 8.05 billion people on earth don't believe in Mormonism. Just from that.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like, but the thing is, my one friend, he knew this, but he was like, I couldn't have told you that. You needed to ask, right?
You had to find out for yourself.
You had to ask. And he said, because I'm not out to destroy anybody's faith, man. But I met you and you're a great guy. You're very into this. You believed and it was strong. And you had this ethical view of the world and how we should all live, which was great. But no, I couldn't tell you that.
Yeah.
That was not my job as your professor.
He just had to concur once you came to that conclusion.
Yeah, and I rang him up. He was like, yep, you're right. That's impossible.
It's like, now my son, you see.
Yeah. So that was what ended. But like, no, when I was on my mission, I was in Hamburg, Germany.
Okay.
And there I was the mission scriptorian and I was the mission cleaner. Like the scriptorian, like I had elders and sisters calling me from parts of the mission. I didn't even know who they were. They're like, look, we got this guy has this question. I could just run down the scriptures, give him everything, give him the explanation. I'd write up 4 pages and mail it off to him. Right.
Right. Now, musically, Hamburg is important in rock and roll, right? The Beatles went.
The Beatles. Yeah. Yeah, actually, after my mission, because the Beatles hangout was in Club Star. No, not yeah. They're in Hamburg on the Reeperbahn, which is where it's Europe's most sinful mile. Strip clubs, whorehouses, sex shops, drugs, all that right there on that street.
And elders on the street corners.
No, like we were like, you would get sent home if you went there, right? So after the mission, I went back and I went over, took pictures of Club Stars, did my Beatles pilgrimage there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and a return to the mission, sort of a combo.
Yeah. Well, I just went back to bum around, see some friends from the mission. And then I went back and went and lived in Holland for a while. And then I lived in France. And then I, ended up in all these other places too. So
I've heard the names of those countries, so I'm pretty sure they exist.
Yes. I went after I ran out of money at Harvard during the .bomb age, because I was a telecommunications engineer for a very big .com that tanked. And I was like, well, I can't afford anything now, right? And everybody lost their jobs in tech. So I switched to computer science because a philosophy degree from Harvard was not gonna, pay the bills. So I moved up to Montreal and studied computer science and engineering at a French school up there.
Okay.
So at the École Polytechnique de Montréal. So, and all of that up until how did I get into where I'm at right now? I got very involved with the Love Loud as a foundation as a volunteer.
And let's say a little bit more about Love Loud.
Love Loud
2017 was the first one.
Yeah, I went in 2018. I just said, hey, I'll volunteer because I do concert photography. Buddy of mine was like, dude, let's just start shooting again. And he had been shooting a lot, and he didn't have the chutzpah that I did, because I had actually shot U2 on multiple tours before. And then I come in here and I was like, he said, you got something that nobody else has. Number one, you got chutzpah, man. You got balls, because you're just going to walk up and talk to anybody.
You're going to get in there.
Okay? He said, and second, you've shot U2, and that gives you all the street cred in the world.
There you go.
So I started shooting small gigs at local bars and stuff. And then, volunteer.
Loud. Dan Reynolds was Love Loud.
Dan Reynolds, great. And so I went and I did Love Loud 1 year, and then there I met in the photo pit. I met this guy, Adam Dupuis. He's the managing editor for a magazine called Instinct. It's the 3rd biggest LGBTQ magazine in America.
Wow.
And he rang me up the next day, said, look, I got approached by this newspaper over in England. I need to know how to play the copyright laws. Can you? And I said, look, yeah, I got a guy. He does that. He's the first guy who played the copyright law business to his benefit. And he made $1 million off of downloads off the internet. He was the first guy to do it. So
so you were the connection.
Yeah. And then
if you only can get 10% of all the deals that you push through that way.
Well, with Spotify and all that these days, I'd probably get $1 a year, but yeah. So this guy, Adam, reached out a little later. He said, do you want to do an interview? Do you want to like write an interview for us, right? Do an interview. And if we like it, we'll have you do another.
And you just pick your own artist to interview?
Yeah, so I rang up my friend Jim. He's in the band called Go Fight. He's bisexual in the Chicago industrial music scene. Interviewed him. They liked that. And then I went and did a concert review after that. And he said, they're like, all right, we like what you do. Yeah, so I started writing for Instinct. And then started just reaching out to everybody, just different publicists, whatever. And there I go. I just been writing for them ever since.
That was piecework. You just like, you did your own assignments.
Yeah.
You just submitted it and then they paid you per word.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Well, not,
per article.
And not per word, let's say that. But during the pandemic, the guys over at Instinct said, look, people like your interviews. You aren't going to concerts anymore because nobody is. So why don't you just fire up a podcast? And so I did. I fired up a podcast. Thus the name. I spent like 2-3 days trying to find the name, right, that would work. And then there's one of my fave bands called Shriekback. I had been writing the lead singer of Shriekback about other stuff. I had been in a movie about LGBTQ suicides in Utah called City of Salt. And in there, we started throwing Easter eggs in. And I reached out to the singer Shriekback. I was like, can I wear your shirt in this show, in this movie? He said, yeah, sure. So he mailed me a t-shirt, right? And then anyway, we did the movie, and then I reached out, and then I said, look, you wrote this song called Sticky Jazz. And he said, yeah. I said, well, can I use that as the theme for my podcast, the name of my podcast? And Barry said, sure, yeah, you go ahead. Just, say special thanks to Barry Andrews.
That's right.
So I did. So every episode, hey, special thanks to Barry Andrews of Shriekback for letting us use the theme and title of Sticky Jazz. And he's actually been on my show a couple times. So
you hadn't really said anything about jazz until just now.
Right.
I mean, was it a side interest?
Well, the song Sticky Jazz isn't even a jazz song.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's a song about, it's just crazy, dancing with the devil and all that, right? It's a really fun song. Mm-hmm. And it's just a cool idea. I like the name of it. So yeah, let's call this Sticky Jazz. And then, that's where I used it and it stuck. And, pun intended. And now we're, I'm 3 years into it.
And it was really jazzy of a name too.
Yes, it was. Pun. Yes. And I was like probably 4 months into it before I interviewed a jazz musician.
There you go.
Yeah. So that's where it comes from, but
who's your biggest get so far?
Oh, geez. Man, that's a
it's kind of difficult.
Yeah. I've interviewed, for the magazine, I interviewed Elvira, Cassandra Peterson. She was one of my faves, and she was great. I interviewed her for the magazine. And then for the show, probably was OMD, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. It's probably the biggest one so far. Yeah, I don't know, man. I have a lot. I'd have to go back and look at it.
You haven't interviewed David Archuleta yet?
No, I photographed him, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I went.
For the Love Loud thing?
No,
he probably wasn't in that then.
He wasn't in. He was
staying away.
Well, yeah, he was still. He wasn't out then.
Right.
His publicist said, "Look, we got David Archuleta doing a Christmas show there in Salt Lake."
What year was that? You remember?
This was in 19, right before the pandemic.
Okay.
So Christmas of 2019. And I went down and I'm there shooting him at the Capitol Theater in downtown Salt Lake. And
I sent a request to interview to David's publicist or whatever. And he wrote back, thank you, but David's busy writing his book and he's doing other things. He doesn't have time for a podcast. And then like 3 weeks later, he's on some podcast, a music podcast with like 300,000 subscribers. But after a month, he only had like 4,000 views on it. So I wrote back to the publicist and I said, even though I'm kind of a small channel with under 1,000 subscribers, I can post this on Mormon sites that would probably get me like 20,000 views. And I haven't heard back from him.
Oh,
it's like, yeah. I see that David can do a podcast. And he had to go to the studio for this guy, right? And I said, and David wouldn't even have to go to a studio. He'd just like fire up his laptop wherever he was, right?
Yeah.
And so I haven't heard back, but we'll see what happens.
I'm pretty sure. So I reached out after David came out to his publicist, and he said David's having a real rough time right now. So no, his publicist is one of the greatest dudes in the world. He's gotten me some great people.
Okay.
You know, but and I was like, look, I'm the Exmo. I'm here in Utah. I work for Love Loud, right? Yeah, I could, you know, I volunteer at Love Loud, and he said not right now. And I believe he's probably changed his publicist since then because of yeah, I mean this guy over at this group, he's awesome, but once the musicians get to a certain threshold, they have to go to a bigger publicist group.
Oh,
So
right.
that might be you might have tried to get him after he migrated over to somewhere else.
Right.
So
we'll have to exchange notes on that later.
Yeah, let's see.
Maybe we'll get them together. You could be my co-host, or I could be your co-host. Whoever gets them first.
So what? Funny one though.
Collaboration.
Let's see. I had I don't know if you remember that band Chumbawamba.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
you get knocked down.
Yeah, true story. The guitarist Boff was raised Mormon, and I read that in an article once, and then I reached out to him and said, "Hey, just heads up, I'm a Mormon anarchist, so I guess there's two of us now." And he and I have been in email contact, and I interviewed him once for the Mormon Worker, and then I interviewed him on my podcast. And Boff is one of the most charming, just really good guys. You know, he was raised Mormon. He's not anymore. He just said, I need to stop going when he's a teenager. He's like, I'm out, you know, but
was he did he grow up in the UK, or where's Chumbawamba?
Yeah. He's from Leeds, England.
Leeds.
Yeah. And I also had Dunstan, the lead singer for Chumbawamba on my show about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. Yeah. So
that's pretty cool.
God, I also started writing for a non-mainstream magazine called Sounds and Shadows. We handle a lot of punk and industrial techno synth, just anything but Taylor Swift, right? Kind of thing. And when I was over in Germany this last year, I got the opportunity to go and cover one of their favorite bands. That's this Hungarian darkwave band. They came and played a show in Dresden. I went in Dresden and saw them, photographed it, wrote a story about it. And then I also went and saw one of my all-time fave bands that I've never been able to see in my entire life, called New Model Army.
Yeah.
And they're the lead singer is a Quaker, and they don't really fit a genre, but they're most likely punk, but they'll do whatever, you know. And
so they're like holy oat music.
Well, they're like Quaker. The lead singer is Quaker, but they play this very spiritual folk punk. You know, like the content very folkish, even though it's being delivered in a punk way, you know. And the New Model Army are great. That was one of my top 10 bands to see before I die. And so I did that over there, wrote a story. It was great. Got some great photos from the show.
Have you ever been around Mika?
No.
He's from Israel. He's gay.
No.
He's on the French American Idol. I mean, the Voice.
Yeah.
He's been on that a few years. And he has one of his biggest songs with Ariana Grande. Can't remember what it is right now, but anyway, he's kind of a favorite.
Let's see. The biggest I've done. I wrote for, not that I've interviewed, but I've written about, like Duran Duran. I went and photographed their show last year at the Delta Center or whatever it is this week. And so yeah, it was Duran Duran was one of the big. I went and flew down to Hollywood to photograph New Order. They're my second favorite band. So yeah, to photograph, I do a lot more of the big names than I do just to get to interview. But I get to photograph.
Are any of your photographs on in coffee table books or anything like that?
I don't know, actually. I know that some of my YouTube photos got nabbed and were used in places, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure because I'll shoot bands, and sometimes I just say, "Hi, here's the best 8 pictures. Take them and do whatever you want with them." Right? Just give me photo credit.
No, I know that a lot of times there are Getty images. Do they own like 1/3 of the world's images or something like that? Do you know?
Yeah, I know Getty. Yeah, I'm like, I'm not paying $50 for. No, I find ways to get the photos I need. I'm a computer hacker, and I can do a lot of things to to tweak photos or audio or whatever.
There are back doors everywhere.
There are, yes, but you wouldn't believe how many bands are like, yeah, we'd love to have you shoot us. It's and I'll get asked to go and shoot like this. Like, I don't even know. I went and like USANA a couple weeks ago. I went and shot oh gosh, Day to Remember and The Story So Far, which were both very big in the emo thing. And there's, USANA was packed and all that. And I'm down there just in 104 degrees taking pictures. It was,
wow.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that. But it's just, I don't know. I got into this I did the podcast because it was just to kill time, boredom, and so
That's right. Before you got killed by COVID.
Yes, and so I started
the end
podcast.
Of the world was coming.
Actually, I steered clear of COVID until last summer. I didn't get it until and when it hit me, I was like, "Oh, this has got to be COVID," because it feels like when I got that COVID shot, it feels a bit like that, and.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But I had managed to not get it until then. But I started the whole podcast just because there was nothing going on. I still wanted to do interviews. And the guy said, well, LGBTQ artists will feature them at Instinct, no problem. But just do a podcast. Go find cool people. People like your interviews.
Yeah.
So
that sounds fun. So have you ever had anybody interview you then until now?
I did once. A group that they also talk about people who launch as content creators, and this lady was like, she reached out and said, "Look, I've listened to a couple of your interviews. I like how you approach talking to people, and she had heard the let's see, she had the interview I did with Tyler Glenn. I think maybe she read it." Because I didn't have his recording. I mean, I didn't put him up on my show, but he was really funny. I said, well, when you said this on this album, and then the new album, you said this in reference to that, right? Like, what happened between that? Because you reference, and he goes, "Ooh, you caught that, man. That's good. You caught that."
Yeah. People write words for reasons, right?
Yeah.
Lyricists and poets and writers have purpose for their writings.
And I like to go and take their music apart and ask, "Hey, what is this? What was going on with you when you wrote this, when you said this, when you said this?" And I had a great time, there was a lot of cool.
You interviewed him, but you didn't
I interviewed him for the magazine, not for the podcast. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I've done a lot of big names for the magazines. I get more interest in that sometimes than I do for the podcast, because the magazines have Instinct has a couple million readers every month. So that's always going to be good for getting someone in there. But, podcast, sure. I'll use them in both if they agree to it. So,
and so your byline is Jeremy Hinks for these magazines, the writings?
Yeah. So one of the funniest ones, though, I'll tell you this. This was the publicist sent over a girl named Abby Anderson, and she's down in Nashville, but she's from Texas, and she's really funny. She's an absolute sweetheart, and she had made a couple country records, and it was like, I want to make a different record now, and really sassy, and said, and you could talk about her leaving the Mormon church. And so I was like, all right, I'll just do this. And so in the conversation, I said, look, full disclosure here, I left the tribe. And she said, you mean the church? I said, yeah. And she just, whoa, you're my new best friend. And we talked quite a bit about that.
Yeah, being able to commiserate is probably why Mormon Stories has 258,000 subscribers right now.
Mm-hmm.
People feel seen when they hear other people's similar stories.
Yes. Yeah, and John DeLynne's my neighbor. He lives just a couple blocks away. I'll see him out in town and stuff quite a bit.
You can't miss him. 6 foot, whatever.
Yeah, he's 6'4", 6'5". Yeah, he's a big guy, yeah. And I remember one time I was at a fireworks show down at the Holiday City Park there, and I just remember, and I heard him talking sitting behind me. I was like, "Oh, hey, John, hey,"
That's right.
Yeah.
He said that when he first started his podcast, it was, audio, right? So it'd go out
Yeah.
to Spotify or whatever, whatever. And he would go to the church buildings because his brother worked there, and he'd go visit, and he'd be in the elevator and talking to somebody, and somebody would turn around and look at him and say, I know who you are, because they recognize his voice.
That was back when he still believed and was, yeah.
So he will say he was still attending. Right.
Right. Well, so I've talked to him about other situations, and he's like, I'm not out to destroy the church. I'm just calling him out, asking him to be honest.
That's right. Because we all have loved ones that are still in the church that we believe are being harmed in some way by the teachings, right? And some of them know it.
Not just by the teachings, by the leadership.
Right.
I know so many cases where the leaders abused physically and sexually young people and manipulated them to their advantage. And there's just, there's bound to be a ghost in the back of your closet. All right. No matter where you live. That's one of the heaviest lines in the world by the band called the Mountain Goats. But yeah, they have a lot of that they need to be held accountable for.
That's right.
I will say that.
So yes, John is doing some good work, and he's gone from 27,000 subscribers on January 1st, 2021 to 58,000 plus today. And you don't grow that fast. I don't remember the church ever growing that fast.
Yeah, but have you seen the church decline as fast as it is?
Yeah, just like
rats jump in the ship, man.
To me, we're living through history. Like in the past, whenever like New York Times ran an article about the historicity of the Book of Abraham, or its Egyptological roots or whatever in 1912 or something like that, and the church was able to just overcome it because they can say, oh, that's anti-Mormon lies, and nobody could fact check it other than, I guess, the New York Times doesn't know what they're talking about. Right?
They will say that. I mean, one of the most interesting ones was I read the article written by Charles Anton. He said, whatever Martin Harris, he said, I found out my name is attached to this, and I'm telling you that story is not correct. This is what really happened. Martin Harris, I took to be a very simple man, a fool. And I would not sign anything. He said, he laid out this paper, and I was like, that is no language that I am aware of.
Yeah.
And he said, it looks like random scribbles and whatnot. And then someone sometime later comes up with, hey, Charles Anton signed a statement of authenticity and then ripped it up. And he said, that is not what happened. But the church still maintains their version of that story when very clearly they if you just go and look, Charles Anton called out, no, man, that Martin Harris guy was an idiot. And I wouldn't ever sign off on something like that. I would never allow my name to be attached to that.
I think we can trust Martin Harris because he once saw Jesus in the form of a deer.
Oh, yeah, Martin Harris. Yeah, he was a practicing Catholic, Seventh-day Adventist, Methodist, Episcopalian.
He was a joiner.
He was in all of it, man. So yeah, I My shelf breaker was the Deutero-Isaiah thing. But then
you find all these other confirming bits.
Well, I wrote up a letter, just 5 questions, right? That the CES letter doesn't touch. Okay. Well, it does, but not with the detail that I present in it. Okay. It doesn't even touch. The CES letter doesn't have Deutero-Isaiah, but there's all this other stuff that I'm like, look, I'm just going to say, I mean, the sum is greater than the whole of all of its parts here. When you have this and this and this and this and this in place, okay, they can't say this and still have this be valid.
Right. And they can attack one little bit at a time with their mental gymnastics and the defenders of the faith. But when the whole thing is presented, it's really hard.
Yes, you can't. Yeah, there's absolutely no way to say that.
Is your paper available for anyone to see?
Yeah, I just called it the Big Five, the Isaiah Quandary.
Okay.
You know, it's out there. I mean, I can send it to you if I can. I'll go find it and send it to you.
Yeah, maybe I could provide it as a link in the description. And then
sure, yeah, it's just the Big Five. I'll find it because it was a joke. Because on the mission we had the Big 5 questions that we had to ask for a potential baptism, and oh man, let me tell you, when I was in there doing baptismal interviews, I'm like, I can't look at this lady and ask her if she has a problem with masturbating. Oh, okay, all right, I'm just gonna glide right through that one and keep going. You know, when
they might as well tell 20-year-old boys to say, ask women if they have a vagina.
Yeah, I was like, hey, cool, move on, right? And
yeah,
so
good. You did a lot of. The Spirit tells me you're okay with this question without even asking it.
I hated the baptismal interview, that part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in Germany,
that's future bishop training.
Oh God, yeah. Man, I had bishops that were just tools. Like, oh, total yes. I had one like, okay, back in high school, I was a punk kid, long hair, earrings, you know, leather jacket or a black trench coat, combat boots, right? You know, Sex Pistols, Sisters of Mercy, Modern English, you know. And I had bishops that were just like on me about my hair. I'm like, I'm in the rock and roll world, man, you know, and they're like, oh, those earrings. And I'm like, but look, okay, I'll take my earrings out to bless and pass the sacrament because the Lord told Moses to remove his earrings and his nose ring to do. So I will for that. Right. And, you know, they couldn't argue that with me. They could not argue. So they, you know, but I was like, I was the guy who I went into the MTC having read the standard works through it only twice, but still, I thought I was like way behind on everybody because I had been inactive for years. Right. And then I get in there and I'm like, wait, you've never read this? You know, so. But
that reminds me when I was in seminary, we had to like memorize one scripture. So I memorized their rings and nose jewels, and I don't know the context of it. And somebody says, "Well, why didn't you just memorize Jesus wept?" That would have been even shorter.
Oh yeah, that was. I was like, but he says right here, man. So I'll take him out to bless and pass the sacrament. Oh, okay. And they, you know, but I had one bishop. He was like, you know, oh, that earthquake in Mexico that killed 500 people, that volcano that happened, and all that. You know, the Lord is so unhappy with the world.
That's right, caused by long hair.
Because of your long hair, shows how wicked the world really is, and just like on me, like. Dude.
He was probably a dad that would say, eat all your food because there are starving children in India. Not sure how that relates, but
he would say that, and I'm like, but he finally got me, said, look, if you cut your hair, then the Lord will help you stop masturbating. So I did, and that went for like a week, you know, but like
that's right. It was true for 7 days.
Yeah, but it's the job of every bishop to tell a teenage boy that he's the only one who does it,
That's right.
And
I remember my health, family life, whatever teacher in high school said that there are statistics that say 95% of boys masturbate, or men or whatever, and the other 5% lie.
Yeah. Yeah. And, but they would I can't believe the crap that these bishops put us through, you know? And so
you know what? We
I
should
didn't have
probably
it as,
do another show about
okay.
some of these topics,
Sure.
and we'll end this creator's journey,
Yeah.
with
Yeah, boy, we went off on a tangent and a half there, but
yeah, and I won't edit it out; it'll still be there.
oh, all right, cool. All
But
right.
but anyhow, so yeah, let's try to collaborate on
Sure.
some shows.
Yeah, I'd love to, man. You know,
You know,
I'm always able to talk about stuff. I got,
yeah.
I have
What's this?
no subject I won't talk to someone about,
Yeah,
except for tax law, and that's like the most boring shit in the world. Won't ever touch it. But I'm good for other topics.
yeah. Neon Trees. That's the lead singer that you
Yeah,
talked about,
Tyler Glenn. Yeah,
Tyler Glenn. So
yeah.
yeah, if you can get him on a collaboration where we both interview him at the same time, one for our podcast and one for yours.
I don't know if he's doing anything right now. I know they're back on tour somewhere, but yeah, I could.
We could just talk about his journey, right? It'd still be a good podcast for your show, right?
Well, he's been on
His
Mormon
musical
Stories,
journey.
and I covered him in Instinct. Man, he was great. He was really a good interview.
That's right. Neon Trees. Everybody talks.
Yeah, everybody talks, but one of the funny things I said, this is where you made it, was when my wife and I were watching that show Homeland the other day, and they were playing your song "Everybody Talks" on the car stereo in the chase scene, right? And I said, you made it when your music hits it there,
That's
when
right.
when it's on the car radio in a show, right? And he's like, yeah, yeah, they told us we're gonna, okay, fine, Tyler Glenn's such a great, unassuming guy. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, and I know he was part of Love Loud early.
He still is. Yeah, he's one of the head honchos over there.
There was a movie about Love Loud, documentary, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I think I saw that just before the 2018 Love Loud concert.
Okay.
And it made me want to go to the concert, and then by the time I got around to look up when it was the week before. So, and I live in California. It would have taken, a little bit of planning, to head out that way. But
yeah.
But my wife was a believer, and I shared that with her, and it was part of her deconstruction for sure.
Okay.
It took a few more years. It took COVID, where we can spend a lot of time doing a deep dive, which is another thing, talking about we're living in history. Because of COVID, nobody went to church for I don't know how many months, right?
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's realizing we can survive without church. Life was actually better, but with having a second Saturday sometimes, and also with all the internet information that's out there. You type in Mormon, and probably the only reason why Mormon is a bad word now is because if you type it in, you're going to find a lot of stuff.
Yes.
That's truthful history that you were taught probably was anti-Mormon lies or something like that.
Oh, yeah. And there was a lot about just I had I discovered Deutero Isaiah quite some time ago. I was like, okay, I'm out. I'm done. Should have figured this out while I was at school, but I didn't. So I was done. COVID come around. I'm like, great, no reason we're just done going and all that. Now I will, believe it or not, I'll go to the Quaker church.
Huh. Have you ever been to Community of Christ?
Yes. Love those guys. Yes.
Yeah. I wore this shirt at a Community of Christ meeting, and shorts. And nobody batted an eye.
I've showed up in my kilt. I've shown up in whatever, and they're just, I remember one of the my first day, a buddy of mine said, "Yeah, when you go, you're gonna see something really freaky." So I went, and there was the bishop, and she was there with her tank top on and tattoos, and welcome everyone. I'm like, oh yes,
Yeah.
These would be my people in this transition, and even John Hamer, you know who he is, right?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it was last year he came through for Sunstone,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew he was going to be there, so I just popped in. I said, "Look, in the middle of a lot of stuff going on, I just want to pop in and say, hey, you're one of my favorite people in the wonderful, weird world of ex-Mormonism or fringe Mormonism." And it's, hey, man, good to see you. Shook hands, and I took off, right?
So you just did that. You didn't pay.
I didn't. You don't have to pay there. It's
you don't have to pay to walk in.
No. I just went and said, "Hey, John, good to see you." We shook hands, and I left, and I sent him a message on Facebook the next day. I said, "Sorry to throw you in there with weird. Well, I consider that I meant that as a compliment." And he writes back, he says, "That's the only way I would take it, is being called weird as a compliment."
That's right.
Yeah. So the Community of Christ were fantastic people. They're great.
Yeah, that's for sure. So anyway, we'll end the show. Thanks, Jeremy, for coming on and expressing your journey. We'll have everybody, we'll have a link to your podcast in our description. And if you want, as a collaboration, if you could show this on your channel, if you thought your viewers would want to see an interview about you or something like that.
Okay.
And everybody,
I can put it up on my YouTube channel for sure.
Yeah. Everybody like and subscribe, and have a great rest of the summer. Bye-bye.
All right.